Hey, whoa, that Leonardo DiCaprio face is from like what, 10 years ago? Let me fix this. Right, there we are. The last 20 years or so, every so often I would read in car magazines, "The Chinese are coming, the Chinese are coming," but it never came. To give you an example, back in the early 2000s, a Dutch entrepreneur managed to launch a new Chinese budget value for money brand, Landwind. Things were off to a great start, but as soon as a German motoring association put the car to the crash test, it received horrible ratings, and the damage was, literally and figuratively, already done. Landwind vanished. Chinese cars were cheap, very cheap, but for all the wrong reasons. Now things are different. The Chinese are trying to conquer the European market once again, with electric cars, with brands such as NIO, MG, Lynk & Co, BYD and XPeng. Some of these brands already sell the cars over here, and that begs the question, the Chinese are here, but have they truly arrived? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Hello everyone, my name is Edward and welcome to another review here on edsautoreviews, where I present you the Aiways U5. Aiways. Ever heard of it? Probably not. And if I'd asked you about it, let's say some 5 years ago, you wouldn't know, simply because the company didn't exist back then. Setting up a complete car company with a new model in just 5 years is a very rapid move. But Aiways is pretty much an example of the current Chinese car industry. Electric vehicle startups are popping up all over the country as of right now, and in typical Chinese fashion, it all develops at a mind-boggling pace. So I hear you think, what is this brand and model? Is it truly good, or is it the new Landwind? Well, let's find out. One could say that the U5 is the right car at the right time. Look at it. It's electric and it's a compact crossover SUV, currently a very popular body style. Sure, it's a boring and safe choice, as everything these days is either a pickup, SUV or a crossover, but business-wise, a smart decision. Act normal and you'll act crazy enough, especially from a brand we have never heard of before. You are looking at a vehicle that is powered by an electric motor, making 200 horsepower and some 300 newton meters of torque, with a presumed range of about 400 kilometers or really 300 kilometers in the harsh real-world conditions. Depending on where you live, expect to pay around $40,000 for this car. Let's talk design, shall we? In the past, Chinese cars gained a reputation for copying Western car brands, but as of right now, most Chinese companies have their entirely own unique design language going on, with a few exceptions here and there. To be fair, looking at the front, there is no car that looks quite like this. The headlights are unique, and so is the grille, or the lack of one. The side is your typical crossover body, and it's only from the rear I detect a slight hint of Mitsubishi Outlander, but that's about it. And I have to say, good job on the styling, Aiways. It's inoffensive, but still distinct enough to raise some eyebrows. Getting into this interior, we are greeted with a very simple and straightforward design. No aggressive lines or big infotainment screens, but here is where you see that it is truly Chinese. At first glance, the interior is nice, but gets less nice the more you zoom in on it. The lower you go, the more plasticky it becomes. There is no glove box. The lack of space there is kind of made up with the massive cargo space almost everywhere else, but it would still be nice to have some space there, although you can hang a bag or two onto these little hooks. The steering wheel seems to come from Audi, part of the door panels from Mercedes, and the center console, including a gear selector, seems to come from the same factory that also provides parts for Jaguar. This button doesn't do anything, but I think it just activates a self-destruction procedure. And oh, don't confuse the gear selector for the volume knob, otherwise you're in for a very bad time. Don't let the long list of driver-assisting safety features fool you. The U5 has been giving a 3-star Euro NCAP rating, and to give you some idea, anything below 4 stars is considered almost unacceptable by us Europeans. Aiways says they are working on it. Now, the U5 has a little camera in the A-pillar. Aiways says that it's a little camera that registers you and your face and can tell if you're paying attention to the road or not, you know, or you're kind of sleeping or playing with your phone. And I think it's just a very nice way to say that the Chinese government is directly spying on you. One of the massive advantages of this car is also the massive rear legroom. Seriously, it is huge, and that begs the question: how did they achieve this? Because the car is average size for an SUV and with normal proportions. So how did this happen? Well, the engine is tucked under the floor, and so there is not a lot of space needed for the trunk, or frunk if you want, and so a lot of space is used for the interior, resulting in massive rear legroom. On to the drive. The fun thing is, the very first time I drove a U5 was on the racetrack. But this car is in no way intended for the racetrack. The pull-away performance is of course terrific, and I wouldn't expect anything else from an EV. But the overall experience is predictable. The steering is light, but there is almost no feeling in it. The ride is comfortable, but not much more or less. A perfectly fine, yet boring driving experience. But isn't it also what the average consumer is looking for? So, what to make of this car? Well, I guess this is pretty much a car for people much like me, that really like value for money and don't really care what kind of badge is glued onto the hood. Case in point, my own Hyundai XG350. I also think this is kind of a car for the more adventurous buyer that just want to have something unique, something that is a bit lower priced and is not an expensive electric Tesla. And that leaves us with the final question. Have the Chinese truly arrived? Well, not yet, but they are close. Only just a couple more miles to go. And who knows how the European street scene is going to look like in 10 years, when we will probably all drive Chinese. It's only a matter of time.